Good morning, I'm Stacey Leska for the Los Angeles Times. Last night marked the 65th Annual Emmy Awards, a night celebrating the best and brightest of the small screen. And today we're talking about it all, from the red carpet to the final curtain. If you want to join our live chat, hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag AskLATimes. We'll make sure to get as many of your questions and comments included as possible. Answering those questions are two of our best and brightest entertainment reporters, Glenn Whipp and Mary McNamara. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning.
Are you guys tired? It's
I
kind
don't
of a
know
long
how
night.
bright I'm feeling right now, but let's give it a
Post-Emmy
shot.
hangover.
That show is really long. You forget
It
that.
seemed particularly long last night. It
Yeah.
really did. It was like I was looking at it. I felt like it was almost over, and I realized, oh my God, we're only halfway through.
I'm feeling a little Emmy hungover this morning.
Yes, exactly.
So.
There is a peculiar dry mouth headache that
I
goes
know.
along.
Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the host, Neil Patrick Harris. How do you think he did hosting compared to his other hosting duties he's done this year with the Tonys and all of the other hosts that were on stage with him?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the host can only do so much. I think Modern Family's Steve Levitan summed it up quite well at the end when he accepted Best Comedy. He said, "Geez, this is the saddest Emmys ever," and it
Yeah.
really felt that way, and it kind of dragged the energy down with all the tributes. Carrie Underwood singing Yesterday, Elton John's Dirge. I mean, you had just so many low energy moments that what could the host do to bring it back
It was
up?
the I See Dead People
Yeah.
Emmys. It was kind of weird, and I felt like Neil Patrick Harris was a little off his game. I mean, he has been spread so thin, and he made that kind of a running joke of the evening.
Yeah.
He opened with, oh my God, there's so much TV, I can't catch up, and then with an argument on stage with the other hosts about how hard it is, and then we had, this sort of, what did he call it? The musical number in the middle of the show,
Yeah.
like sort of just reffing the fact that he does these musical numbers that often have nothing to do with what is happening with the rest of the show. And taken as a whole, to me, I was thinking, is he like sort of subconsciously pleading with us to not ask him to host so much? Because he seemed to be saying, this is all I can really do with this gig. And so I think combined with, as Glenn just pointed out, the Academy's decision to do those 5 separate in memoriams, the show just never got moving. And then whenever it got like a little tiny burst of energy from a surprise win or something, it got dragged down with, okay, and now here's another sad moment. Here's someone we lost. So it was just a really weirdly paced show.
Although Carrie Underwood's performance was actually the most tweeted Emmy moment, do you think that's saying something about how the show went?
I think that's saying something about who's using Twitter.
Well, I think it's not necessarily a good thing to be the most tweeted about moment.
Yes, that's true. They weren't all nice comments.
Right.
Yes, I mean, it really didn't, I didn't think that moment shone and taken, and again, because it was so sad, I think at that point we were all like, oh, yay, just what we need, another sad song.
But the Emmys were actually tweeted, I believe, 161,000 times at their peak. So people seem to still be interested in it, even though it was going up against Breaking Bad. What do you think about that decision to still continue with the episode of Breaking Bad during the Emmys?
I guess it kind of speaks to how we watch TV today because, I DVR'd Breaking Bad. I could work and then go home and watch it. You have that freedom to watch it anytime. You don't have to necessarily worry about it. And probably, it's interesting, the Emmys, you said that they felt kind of long. I mean, the lead acting Emmys were handed out, about the 2-hour mark? And then you had like an hour left on the show, and everybody was going, well, what's left? And it was kind of the behind the candelabra segment, the choreography, the odd choreography piece, a lot of things that weren't necessarily awards that people really cared about. So you could possibly imagine a lot of people just tuning out after Claire Danes won.
And that choreography award, it was only 2 shows that were up for the award, Dancing with the Stars and You Think You Can Dance. Do you think that award was kind of put in there just for Neil Patrick Harris to be able to dance?
I think it was, and then having like that big, where he interviewed the choreographers and the dancers, that big set piece, and then having that big dance number, which, I mean, I thought we had agreed as a nation to stop doing these interpretive dance. I mean, that's what they used to do at the Oscars. Everybody laughed at them, and I'm like going, what is going on here? But I think, again, it was like very much about, who Neil Patrick, it was like a joke on Neil Patrick, which I guess would have worked fine if it was if the show had been moving better. But we also had a problem where almost every winner got played off before they were finished, and they weren't dragging on. I mean, I don't know how long they gave them. I mean, like a minute.
Yeah.
It's like they were really, and so it seemed kind of unfair. Here are these people who actually just won an Emmy, and they're not able to thank all their friends or say, give their little speech so that we can watch, dancers, which, it's not like television right now is in the peak of the variety show.
Yeah.
It's like they watched Merritt Weaver win the first Emmy, and she gave her
They're like,
acceptance speech
"Yay!"
in 7
So-
seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And
it's all
they
going to
said,
be 15 seconds or not.
After that, that's how much time you have.
That's
But it's
so
like
funny.
Mary's
That's what I
saying,
kind of want, just a quick, short, and
right?
sweet
I know.
Even when they all had short speeches, Claire Danes had this beautiful tribute,
Right.
and then 30 seconds in, they're
playing
playing
her off.
Yeah.
they're playing the piano music, and she doesn't have any chance to thank anyone else besides that tribute. And I think the audience would rather see their favorite stars saying something heartfelt from the stage
Yes.
rather than Neil Patrick Harris' solid gold dancers.
I really felt like if there was one problem that the Emmys had, it was that it didn't really acknowledge how fabulous television is, because it was like they didn't trust television. It didn't trust the winners to be really interesting. There were no film clips, which seems kind of ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to do those in memoriams, I would think you would want to see Jonathan Winters rather than having, Robin Williams talk about him, or at least a little bit of both. And also, I really feel like with these performances, particularly now when I guess the rule is that, it's like one episode is going to determine the Emmy, I wanted to see a piece of those, performances
Yes.
for the big categories, for the best, actor and actress in comedy and drama. I wanted to see maybe a clip from the top nominated shows. And there's no shame in film clips. I mean, people like those things. And instead it seemed like a lot of talking and an inordinate amount of music and dance. It was
Yeah.
very weird.
Well, speaking of people like Merritt Weaver, she really kicked off the night of surprise winners. What do you think about that? Every underdog seemed to win.
Well, it was like kind of either it was the absolute most predictable person, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Jim Parsons, Modern Family, or it was the person with the longest odds that like hadn't even come up in conversation.
Yeah. I mean, Merritt Weaver, really, I frankly only think of her as Schmidt's girlfriend from New Girl.
Yeah.
I never even think of her.
She's very good on Nurse
The-
Jackie, though. I love her.
Yeah, she is very good. But the three real big upset winners, Merritt Weaver,
Yeah.
Bobby Cannavale from Boardwalk Empire, and then Jeff Daniels from The Newsroom. It's like Mary said, they went with these very long shot people from premium cable shows that very, very few people watch in the real world, I mean, I bet there were, nobody, in this age of the television recap, there's nobody who recaps Nurse Jackie.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so. It's like, who watches Nurse Jackie?
I like Nurse Jackie.
Yeah, again, I'm not necessarily saying, awful choice. It's just kind of an odd choice.
Right.
Jeff Daniels winning for Best Actor over
Kevin Spacey.
Spacey. Everybody figured Spacey would be the movie
Bryan
star to
Cranston.
win. Cranston, John Hamm. I mean, if you're making the determination on the Emmy submission, the one episode they're submitting, Jeff Daniels kind of got it for delivering this 3-minute monologue that Aaron Sorkin wrote for the pilot of The Newsroom. That's why America is no longer the greatest nation. But I mean, that was it pretty much for that Newsroom pilot. And meanwhile, John Hamm just killed it in the Mad Men finale.
Yes.
And so now you've got a situation where Nurse Jackie has won, Edie Falco and Merritt Weaver have won Emmys, but no one from Mad Men,
Right.
no actor from Mad Men has ever won an Emmy.
Yeah. Well, at least HBO must be happy this morning. They really came away.
Yes, and I'm sure they were surprised. I'm sure they were just,
Yeah.
that was it was funny to see Jeff Daniels. I mean, he was genuinely surprised. I mean, so often these people get up there and they go, "Oh, I'm so surprised," and then they trot out their, well-rehearsed acceptance speech. How surprised were you? But Bobby Cannavale and Jeff Daniels were just like, Jeff Daniels didn't even spit out his gum. It was like, come on, spit out your gum. He really didn't expect to be getting up on stage. And so as far as television went, that made for a nice moment, but whether it was, I feel like almost everyone who was nominated, had Emmy, written all over them. But it was like how people chose from those from those lists was at times a little surprising.
We actually have a comment from Facebook from Ronaldo Medina who said Bryan Cranston was robbed. How does Jeff Daniels beat him? Walter White versus a news anchor? Come on. So I saw a really interesting point on Twitter where someone was asking, is Breaking Bad splitting the votes? Do you think that that could have happened?
Well, no, because Bryan Cranston didn't go up against Aaron Paul.
Yeah.
Aaron Paul was supporting, but
Aaron
neither.
Paul had two. Aaron Paul and Jonathan Banks were both
Yes.
nominated
Oh
for
yeah,
Breaking
right.
Bad.
That's true. That they could have, but
They could have split.
that was a big surprise that Aaron Paul didn't win. I mean, Bryan Cranston has won 3 times. I think there's a feeling too that he will be nominated again next year. So like there is a chance that we'll see a Breaking Bad sweep next year. I was surprised that it didn't win more, just because the buzz has been so heavy on it this year, and because the timing of the final season during actually the voting period was so fortuitous for them. So I don't know how that happened. I mean, there are a lot of considerations. I do think, it's kind of weird. We were talking about this earlier, this new idea of voting off of one specific episode, that's what you're supposed to vote on, which I understand is, in terms of time management for Academy members is helpful. But in terms of like reflecting what television is actually about, it's almost an antithesis to what these people are doing, because that's what separates TV from movies, is that this is an ongoing relationship. It's an ongoing performance. You can't capture it in 1 hour or 2 hours. And so to say, we need to judge for the Emmys based on a 1 hour performance seems to me like defeating the purpose of the Emmys.
Right, that's kind of what I think hurt Louis C.K., who had so many
Right.
great episodes this year
very
on
subtle.
Louis, but a lot of his episodes were part of, the best thing he did was this Late Show, and it was a trilogy of episodes, so you can't really submit just one of the episodes and assume that voters have seen all 3. Meanwhile, Jim Parsons had this kind of flawless Big Bang Theory episode, one of the best of this series season, and he was great in it, as he usually is, perfect timing, flawless delivery, and he won because he had a better submission. But if you look at just kind of what Mary's saying, in the overall scheme of things, Louis C.K., in terms of comic risk-taking and ambition, should have won the Emmy.
But Jim Parsons has really become the perennial favorite. I mean,
Yes.
I saw another interesting quote on Twitter that he's won 3 out of 5 of his, while Amy Poehler is actually 0 for 6 now. She's kind of the Susan Lucci of primetime.
So not fair. That was like one of my big Emmy wishes, that she would win. But again, I think that these, basing it on one single episode works against some of these performers who are either, who are very ensemble oriented. I mean, Amy Poehler is the star of Parks and Rec, but she doesn't have like these big huge scenes where it's just her monologuing. It's it's a very ensemble show. She drives the show, her energy drives the show, or her characters does, but so it's not fair to like sort of compare that to somebody who maybe does have carry the weight of a single episode, so then their performance looks somehow stronger. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I really wanted her to win, or Laura Dern, who was amazing.
Parks and Rec, no Emmys in its history, has
I
never
know,
won an Emmy.
it's
And you talk
weird.
about such an ensemble show. Nick Offerman, who's I know a huge
know.
favorite of both of ours,
Yes.
Huge
but
favorite
but
of
he,
Has he even been
everyone.
nominated?
he has
I mean,
never
it's
been
wrong.
even nominated, and it's because it is an ensemble show, and he just has a handful of moments each episode where he just kills
Right,
it. I mean, he's created this iconic character, but he's never been nominated, and Parks has never won an Emmy.
His mustache alone deserves a nomination.
Yes.
I do think we need to, I do not in any way mean to suggest that like Julie Louis-Dreyfus she delivers a fabulous performance. I mean, that's what's so great about these nominees. It's like increasingly there is not a dud among them. I mean, in past years when we didn't have so much great television, when they had to like kind of scrape around to fill out something that you were just like, oh, this person got nominated, but we never feel that way now, or at least I never do. But I do feel like in terms, you do want to feel like spread the wealth around. There's so much good TV that there's no like 1 or 2 hugely standout shows. So you feel like the Emmys should somehow represent, the fact that there is just so much good stuff that everybody should, get a chance.
So speaking of spreading the wealth too, Colbert Report finally knocked The Daily Show off their 10-year streak. Do you think it was just because people were getting sick of seeing Jon Stewart get up on stage every year?
I think Colbert should have won last year because of that super PAC, thing that he did. That was, not only was that amazing television, that was like amazing investigative reporting. I mean, that was like, holy cow, we've never seen satire at that level. So I think that to a certain extent, this might have been a makeup for that. But I mean, Colbert is just, I feel like I think it actually took a long time for people to understand what he was doing. I mean, I think people, like, even now sometimes think, oh, he's really like that. They don't get that it's a performance,
Yeah.
And so I think there was that. But I think it was just, it's time. It's overdue time.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of take those two shows together on Comedy Central. So for The Daily Show to win that many times in a row was insane. I mean, finally, Colbert gets his
Even
due.
Jon Stewart last year when he won was like,
Again.
Stephen Colbert is doing, what I do, only in a much more original and difficult way. So, and I thought it was really nice. Colbert thanked Jon Stewart. That was like, it was like, it was very simpatico. It's not, they've both gone out of their way to say this is not a competition. This is, we're comrades in arms.
And we could talk about the people behind us, Modern Family. Do you think that they're maybe losing their luster a little bit because they lost in a couple of the individual categories, but still managed to take home the big prize?
Yeah, you kind of wondered after they had lost the supporting actor, which they've won 3 years running.
And there were 3 of them in the category.
I
Right,
know.
supporting actress, Julie Bowen, Sofia Vergara, both favorites to win. So you kind of wonder, well, maybe will they lose finally comedy series? But they didn't. And that comedy series category, you have these sort of niche, very smart shows like Louie and Veep and Girls that appeal, I think, to the same comic sensibility. And then you have Modern Family and Big Bang Theory, these two real popular, huge comedies that I think Modern Family clearly stands out to voters more than Big Bang Theory. And I think Modern Family stands apart from those other sort of niche cable shows. And I don't know if it's losing its luster. I think it had its weakest season this year.
I think that it was not. I mean, the bar is very high. They do a tremendous job. This was not their best season. I think that there is like fatigue in seeing the same names over and over again. But I do think that what we're coming up against is like this division that everybody's been talking about, which is you have these big from the big 4 networks, these shows with 22 episodes, with censors, with advertising constraints, that going up against these cable shows that are often 12 episodes or fewer, that don't have to hit the same kind of rules. And so there's almost like this feeling that it's not an equal race, And so it's like people, I think, are looking at the Emmys and going, okay, I'm not seeing the shows that I watch all the time, so why should I watch the Emmys? It's like the same kind of thing that the Oscars have had to deal with over the years. So I think they're kind of hitting a watershed where they're going to have to figure out if they're going to have to, I always thought, well, maybe they should divide, do subdivision awards. So like, the 12 episodes are under, in one category, and then the 22 episodes in another category. But of course, then the show would be 6 hours long and I would kill myself, so.
Yeah, and like 30 Rock in the comedy series had a 13-episode season for its final season.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was really strong because Tina Fey, Robert Carlock were able to craft this great arc like Louie and Veep do. But Mary makes a really good point. When you're grinding out 22 episodes, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there is some fatigue with Modern Family winning, but I don't know, that it's completely undeserved.
Yeah, it's a great show. But they're all great shows. It's like trying to figure out which is the greatest of the great. A quality problem.
Hard task for sure. So let's talk about the people lucky enough then to only do a few episodes, the mini-series. Behind the Candelabra, of course, walking away with the big prize. Do you think it was well deserved?
Yeah, that was it was a fabulous, very ambitious movie. That's the thing. So now we have this category which they did collapse, so you have miniseries going up against movies, basically because there are so few actual miniseries right now. The only Was there a legitimate miniseries? I mean, American Horror Story calls itself a miniseries, even though it's really a series.
It's a series.
But it's because its cast changes so often, they're able to, go under. But yeah, so I mean, there was just no way that Michael Douglas was not going to win. There was no, I mean, you've got Steven Soderbergh. I mean, it was a very lavish, over the top talker. Everybody was talking about it. So yeah, I mean, that was a no-brainer.
But that's, I mean, talk about a category that's really weird and unfair. Yeah, you have this 2-hour movie competing against Top of the Lake, which was a 7-part, right?
Yes.
7-part series, which I thought was from Jane Campion.
I thought she could have won. I actually was surprised that she would.
I was not a huge Behind the Candelabra fan. I thought it was overrated. Great lead performance from Michael Douglas. How can you not have fun with that? But in terms of ambition and what it accomplished, I thought Top of the Lake was much better. But I mean, it's apples and oranges. How do you compare a 2-hour movie with a 7-part miniseries?
I think that the Academy is really going to have to, in the next couple of years, grapple with this issue, because we're seeing all sorts of new configurations in terms of television. You're seeing like Rectify, which also I would have loved to have seen get nominated. And that was, I think, what was it, 6 episodes? It is a series because it got renewed, but it's 6 episodes, or maybe it was 8. I can't, but it was a short. It was a very short. You're seeing now, these, what are they calling them? Premium events or limited event television. You're seeing like, something like Under the Dome, which might have been a miniseries, but now is a series. You're seeing, this idea of like either having shorter seasons or having like a 2-season. I mean, it's going to become more like British TV, which is like, it's where the form is going to follow the function based on the, what kind of story do you want to tell? How do you want to tell it, rather than forcing it into some sort of network template or even cable traditional template, which is great for viewers and critics. I mean, I'm totally excited about this, but what the Academy is going to do in terms of the Emmys, I don't know. Because I think next year we will see some true miniseries in that category, and then then you have, okay, well, how do real miniseries compete against TV movies? I don't know.
You're right. We probably don't need any more Emmys.
No more categories.
Yeah, we're good. We'll figure out how to sort through them. But yeah.
Well, lastly, let's talk about the other version of TV, internet TV, and House of Cards coming up next year. I think there's going to be, I would predict a couple
Orange is the
extra.
New Black.
Orange is the New Black, which was Booth's favorite outfit of the night, belonged to Taylor Schilling, the star of Orange is the New Black, so make sure to check that out later. But what do you think about that? Do you think that's going to really change the game for the Emmys, all of these internet shows?
I don't think it's going to change I mean, because so far the Netflix shows, I mean, and even some of I saw the Amazon pilots, they are, they're surprising and new in delivery system, but in terms of structure and content and tone, they're very much television shows. I mean, they range in quality and, and subject matter for cable, basic cable, or even network. I mean, House of Cards could have been a high quality network show. I mean, you could see that. So I don't think that really has an impact on the Emmys until they start, if Netflix starts doing more innovative things in terms of, I don't know what, interactive endings or, accessories or behind the scenes or whatever, then they might have to, do something. But right now it's just another purveyor of a very similar kind of show.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't, I thought House of Cards might have won more. Again, it goes back to, if they were going to honor a movie star, I kind of thought it was going to be Kevin Spacey and not Jeff Daniels. But I mean, they're definitely going to be a factor next year. I would think Orange is the New Black should certainly, in a lot of the supporting actress comedy category, you would think at least would show up a couple of names.
I hope so.
We'll see if any competition comes up for them.
Yeah.
Any final closing Emmy thoughts? Any shows people should definitely be watching on Netflix?
I don't know.
It's it'll be interesting next year. Again, now you've got Modern Family 4 years running.
Yep.
Right.
It was a weird night because you had just these, like Mary said, it was very bipolar. You either had shows and performers that have won so many times and winning again, or just these weird left field choices. So it'll be interesting. And you know, next year we'll be moving in Breaking Bad. It finally won its first series Emmy. It'll be up again next year for its final season. And Mad Men will be entering the first part of its.
Oh, are they breaking theirs up too?
Yeah, 2 years. So it won't be its final
my
season.
God.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I blame Harry Potter for that. It's like they started that horrible trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for our Emmys live coverage. And for more information on the Emmys and wrap-ups, please visit latimes.com.